So I got this sudden sense of a ticking time where I had one more year left when I was 29 to really live and do my young, wild, free, time. And so while I was still employed as an attorney, I set out on a challenge to take 12 trips in 12 months. And I had a text from my boss at the time that said, sick days are only supposed to be used if you're actually sick. And I remember getting so irate. I feel like if I'm a grown adult and I can get things done, why do you care what I'm doing with the time that's already been allocated to me? And so that single interaction with my boss forced me to miss that trip to Portugal. And I was pissed. I was pissed off. And so that weekend I sat in a moment of fury. And that's in that weekend I wrote my first book. What maybe seems like a curse in the moment actually ends up being a blessing in disguise.
All right. I'm talking to Jen Ruiz, and we're going to get into some real, a lot of people listening right now want to travel to places. They a lot of people have a 9 to 5, and you always hear about somebody that, travel blogger, somebody gets to go, just do exciting things. And I mean, it's not all I'm sure it's not all rainbows and daisies, but it sounds pretty attractive. So before we get into the details of your career, want to know where were you from? Let's find out the origin of you and all that stuff. Tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Michael. My name is Jen Ruiz, and I was actually born in Puerto Rico, but raised in Philadelphia. And I practiced law for 5 years before I made this career change. So I was actually an attorney in South Florida. I was barred in 2 states, and I really thought that was going to be my career path, right? After you invest that much in schooling and student loans and all of that. But as I approached my 30th birthday, I realized that I had gone my whole 20s going straight through college, straight through law school, right into work. And I hadn't really enjoyed my 20s in the same way, that maybe other people had, where they'd just been young and carefree. So I got this sudden sense of a ticking time where I had one more year left when I was 29 to really live and do my young, wild, free, time. And so while I was still employed as an attorney, I set out on a challenge to take 12 trips in 12 months before my 30th birthday, which was very hectic. But again, I was motivated because that sense of this time isn't going to come back to me. So I actually ended up surpassing that challenge, taking 20 trips in 12 months. I went into a volcano in Iceland. I swung off the edge of the world in Ecuador. I saw the sunrise over Angkor Wat, and I was back in court by 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So it was a year that changed my life. After that, I wrote my first book, and I've been doing this now full time for the last 5 years.
Okay. Sometimes I'll give somebody a compliment, but I'm sure I'm not the first one to ask you this, but what do? You look like you're in your early 20s.
Thank you.
I mean, but you drink a lot of water. I mean, no, is your parents look really young for their age? I'm just curious. I
absolutely drink a lot of water.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Lots of water. All the things that we hear about, we don't do. Okay. Got it. Well, enough of that. So what did your parents do for a living?
So my mom was a teacher for many years. She worked her way up the administrative, ladder, eventually became a principal. And it wasn't until later in life, in her 40s, when she remarried, that she actually risked her whole life savings to start a franchise preschool. And so I think that I get some of my entrepreneurial spirit from her, because I never had her say to me, don't quit law, stay in the job. That's a bad idea. If anything, when I told her that was what I was doing, she was like, well, I have no idea what it is that you do, but I know if anyone can do it, you can. And she's been one of my biggest supporters.
Were you always a good student?
Yes, I've always been a type A, super involved, straight A, president of every club. If anything, my problem was that I tried to do too much, and it's still my problem to this day, where I'm like, I want to do all the things. And so I think that helps, because I've always been capable of sitting for hours and working on my own project without supervision, without anybody, coming to help. My mom was an educator, and she said that was really rare, where she would just leave and I'd be working on a school project and come back several hours later and I'd still be focused and working on it. And I think that that's what I do now as a full full-time entrepreneur, I just have that kind of mindset of these are all the things I need to get done. And I'm very disciplined with myself.
You have brothers or sisters?
I have a little brother who's the complete opposite of me. And he hates overachieving. He wants life to be as easy as possible. He definitely is not a super big traveler. Just recently, I mean, he has a long-term girlfriend now, and she does love to travel. So he's been humoring her. But I remember my mom and we took a trip to Europe after my high school graduation, and he opted out. He's like, I have no interest in going. So he's very much the opposite of me, very relaxed. People really like him. He makes a great first impression on people, whereas I can sometimes come off as intense. So yeah, we're two different sides of the coin there.
When did the spark start? Well, I mean, your mom, this to travel like this, to go out there and do this. When was the first indication that you had this desire?
So definitely that Europe trip was a big deal, that one right after high school, because I realized at the time we really couldn't afford these big trips. My mom didn't want to let that time go by without marking that occasion. And she knew that this was something I wanted to do. So she'd spent thousands on this Trafalgar tour that we booked through AAA, which was the way that you booked travel back then. And I remember being in Rome, which is one of the ultimate foodie cities in the world. And we're sitting here eating like frozen ham and peas. And I was like, Mom, like I know I can find better for us than this. And so with my Europe for Dummies book, we ditched the tour and I got us around to a lot of places on our own. And I realized I could do this tour planning better than the professional tour planners did with a Europe for Dummies book, with like not knowing anything about Europe, not having been there before. I got us to Stonehenge on a day trip from London. We definitely found better places to eat in Rome. I was like, I promise I will find a place for us. And there were some rocky points, right? Like I didn't realize the subway closed at midnight. I'll never forget being super confident. Like I know exactly how to get us back on the subway, and then being like, oh, the subway's closed. I have no idea what to do right now.
What city were you born?
I was born in Bayamon, Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico. Where's that in relation to like San Juan?
It's about 20 minutes south.
Okay. All right. And then how old were you when you came to the States?
I was 6.
And then where'd you guys move to then?
We moved to Philadelphia, which is where I basically grew up, and I stayed there till I was 17. Okay. And then when I was 17, I got a full scholarship to college. And so because if it had been up to my parents, I would have stayed close to home. But I was like, I do not need approval. I have full funding. I need zero money from you. They're paying for my apartment and everything. Goodbye.
Okay. So now let's jump to, you are practicing law. Were you practicing law at that point?
I was practicing. So I worked for 2 years for a Social Security disability law firm. I clerked for a judge for a year. And then I worked 2 years at Legal Aid doing contract law. And so that switch from private law to nonprofit law gave me back some semblance of a life. Because before then I was working on Christmas Day. I had no vacations. Any time that I took off was really frowned upon. And just being able to go to a job with a normal 10 days off, federal holidays off, I felt like I had been given the gift of time.
And that was in Philadelphia also?
No, this is all in South Florida now at this point, because I went to college in Miami. And so I worked in Fort Lauderdale as an attorney, and then the last 2 years in Naples, Florida.
Got it. So now that point, this is where you embark on your own journey, right?
Yes.
When you're working at the law firm. And then you want to do 12 countries in how many days? What is it?
12 trips in 12 months, but it didn't need to be a new country. I just wanted to plan a trip for myself. So like some of the trips were to the Grand Canyon. I'd never seen the Grand Canyon. And I thought this was something I'd really like to knock out. To San Francisco, because I had the opportunity to fly there for like $20 round trip. And so I was like, I guess we're going to San Francisco. So there were some domestic trips, but it was overall 41 cities across 11 countries.
Wow. Was there a strategy at that point where you said, I'm just going to do this for fun? Or were you kind of already in the incipient stages of like kind of planning something bigger?
I had begun with a couple of things. First, I was learning about credit cards, travel hacking, how do you find cheap flights, all of that. So that knowledge was being built that entire year and tested through my trying to find these cheap flights and afford these trips. At the same time, I had taken on a job teaching English online to kids in China in the mornings. So I would wake up and like from 2:30 a.m. to like 8:30 a.m. I would teach and then I'd go to work. And that allowed me, because I'd asked for raises at the job before, but even if they give you another $5,000, it comes out to like $100 a paycheck max, which is not going to fund my trip anywhere. But taking on those extra classes at $20 an hour, during all these extra hours, then I had an extra $1,000 plus a month that I could use to fund the trips. So that was my first time seeing that remote work was possible. And it was something that, showed that I ended up keeping as a crutch as I transitioned into doing this full time.
So then you get back from these trips and then you kind of go through this gauntlet, so to speak, fun gauntlet. And where's your head at that point? What are you starting to think about? I mean, are you strategizing for your next move, or what does that journey look like?
Yeah. So I got back and I definitely started to get fearful that my vacation time was almost up. I did plan and extend the trips, because at this point I'm on a roll. I'm used to going on trips every month. I'm used to finding the deals. So I had a trip in February. So the year went from January to December because my birthday's in January. And I had a trip in February.
My birthday's in January. Real quick, what's your birthday?
January 3rd, Capricorn?
January 6th. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
You never know. Could have the same birthday. All right, go on.
We could actually. I had another podcaster that we have the same birthday, and we did an interview like 5 years ago. And to this day, he's like, birthday twin.
Not to deviate, but somebody came to work for me on a higher position. And I was like, look, what's your birth date? I need to put this down. And he goes, January 6th. I'm like, no, not my birthday. What's your birthday? He goes, no, January 6th. My birthday. I was like, oh my God, this is so weird.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now it's a weird date that has a weird moniker attached to it, but I digress. So, the Insurrection Day. All right. So now what is this? How do you plan for this? How do you get into what you're doing here? What does that look like? How does that happen?
Yeah.
So you want to transition from like law but you could still do what does it look like at that point?
So what happened was in February, I had a trip planned to Portugal, and I was at a dentist appointment early that morning, and my flight was leaving from Miami in the afternoon. It's a 2-hour drive from Naples to Miami. I actually purposely made the dentist appointment to feel better about myself when I called out sick that Friday, so that I do have a doctor's appointment I'm legitimately going to, but I'm also leaving for Portugal right after. And I had a text from my boss at the time that said, sick days are only supposed to be used if you're actually sick. And I remember getting so irate and being like, I'm actually at the doctor's office. And I took a picture of me there and I sent it to her and everything. And I just felt so defensive immediately and bothered that somebody was so just like, I don't like to be overmanaged, right? I feel like if I'm a grown adult and I can get things done, why do you care what I'm doing with the time that's already been allocated to me? So that's
before the pandemic, right?
Yes. This was 2018.
Okay, got it.
And so it really, really bothered me to the point that I made it all the way to Miami before I realized that I had left my passport at home. And so that single interaction with my boss forced me to miss that trip to Portugal because there wasn't any time for me to go back and be back in time for the flight. And my flight was so bare bones cheap that they weren't able to reschedule me on the next flight. I had to cancel all my existing arrangements in Portugal, and I was pissed. I was pissed off. And so that weekend I sat in a moment of fury. And that's in that weekend I wrote my first book. I just sat there nonstop and I was like, oh, we're making moves now. And I wrote my first book on the Affordable Flight Guide on how to find affordable flights around the world, which is what people had been asking me for. And then I published that book in March of 2018. It became a bestseller in 8 categories on Amazon and won a Reader's Favorite Book Award. So that's
a big accomplishment. I don't want to skim over that real quick because that's good stuff. How long did it take you to write that book? That's still
The weekend of anger.
you like Quentin Tarantino, like that Reservoir Dogs screenplay and everything. I mean, how do you just locked yourself in there the whole weekend? How many pages is this book?
About 100.
Okay. And did you even know how to write a book, the structure of it? I mean, how did you do it? You wrote a good book.
Thank you. I had already been.
I mean, I haven't read the book, but you wrote, obviously you wrote you did really well. You've written 3 books, right?
5, and I have a 6 coming out next summer.
That's awesome. I want to get into all those, but so how did you know how to do that?
I had already been looking into this. So it was already a thought in my mind where I thought, I want to write my own book. People are asking me questions. I have an audience that's been following along on this journey. So, that kind of from December, I'd say through February, when I got home, I would start listening to podcasts. Actually, I find podcasts incredibly useful for learning. And I just listened to all the self-publishing podcasts, and I took notes, and I was learning about how to, actually market a book. Because I think where most authors go wrong is that they think their main job is to write the book, but your main job is to sell the book, because you could write the best book in the world and nobody knows about it and it's going to die. And then you're going to think, I knew publishing wasn't for me. You get discouraged. And so I really was learning on the side the business of book publishing and self-publishing specifically. So I already had that in my mind, but it probably would have been a much longer timeline of me, going home, knocking out a few pages after work, being tired, if I didn't have that impetus of that weekend where I was like, oh, if I'm not in Portugal, like something's coming out of this. And yeah, that was how the first book got started.
So, it's fascinating. Your first book, such a quick write. I mean, how, you sell a book by, from what I understand, by having a lot of friends or following or a lot of money. Did you have a lot of friends and followers, or how did you do that?
A couple of things. That's another mistake I think people make, is that they go to their friends and they're like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. I actually think your friends, even if we're talking 2,000 of them, should be the ones that get your book for free. And then they serve as your hype people to get your book out to the rest of the world. Because your audience is not those 2,000 people. Your audience are the 5 million people on Amazon Kindle every day, right? You want to appeal to the average reader that's going and looking for a book. And so the ways that you do that are with good reviews. So if your book has been reviewed by 5 people, that's not going to be helpful. And so I got, let's say, maybe 100 plus people that were on my launch team. And then of them, because I had already studied all of this, so I knew that not everybody was going to leave you a review. And I knew that, this was going to be the most difficult part of book marketing. So I got them all on my launch team. I was very clear that this is an advanced review copy that you're getting, because that serves 2 purposes. It makes you think you're getting something special ahead of everybody else. And the expectation is set that this isn't just a free book that I'm giving you. It's an expectation that you're going to leave a review. And then once I had more than 10 reviews, then I could start with minimal marketing, but I'd say I wouldn't say I spent more than like $200 on certain book promotion sites to just get the book out there whenever I was having a sale or something later on after the initial 30-day period, because you can't host a price promo on Amazon in the first 30 days. But so your book, if you sell 3,000 copies on day 1, which is what a lot of people do, they put all their promotion immediately when the book comes out. That doesn't tell Amazon anything. You're actually going to rank better and have more longevity on the Amazon shelves if you were to have 30 books sold every single day for that month, or 10 books sold every single day for that month. But seeing that continued interest is what Amazon takes as a sign that people are interested in this, not just a one-time boom because you paid for marketing or because you did this blast, right? But rather that people are continuing to buy and rank your book over time. And so I had my reviews spread out. And so I was like, if your last name starts from A to G, you're going to leave a review this first week. If your last name starts from here, you're going to leave a review the second week, so that the reviews were also spread out too. And then now I just do kind of passive marketing of the book on my website through different things that I share on social media. But actually my success with the first 5 self-published books led for me to get a traditional book deal during this pandemic with a 5-figure book advance. So right now I'm working on my memoir, 12 Trips in 12 Months, about this whole story.
This is great. This is like, this is just so awesome. Okay. So let's go back though. So you write the book, it's 2018. Then what does the story look like from there?
I quit.
Ha! Awesome. Yeah, screw that guy.
Yeah. All I needed was that proof, right? I was like, that's it. I'm making $200 a month from this book. Done. Like I knew I could scale it. I knew that most authors had, that were six-figure authors had 20 or more books. So I already had planned out, okay, these are all the different books that I can write on all my topics of expertise. And I had the Teaching English Online gig, where if I was doing that full time was enough to sustain me while I figured out other income streams related to travel. So with the book as my proof of concept that I could actually make a digital product and sell it online, that was my first entrepreneurial money, because teaching English was still teaching for a company. I'm still somebody's employee. But I had that as a crutch for me, to help me transition.
You know what I like about you so far is, you compartmentalize things in a really simple way to understand. And also like you just said something that really, you said you factored in after 20 books tell me about that. What was that? That sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a statistic that most six-figure authors have 20 books or more. And if you think about it, even, most of the successful commercial authors that we know from traditional publishing companies, Stephen King, Nora Roberts, right? They have so many books. And so if you're going to make a living as an author, I think you need to realize that it's not just one book. And that's also a big mistake that people make. They expect that they're going to wait their whole life and then write this magnus opus of everything that they know in this encyclopedia that literally no one will ever read because it's overwhelming, right? Whereas if you, especially in the nonfiction space, if you're breaking down your knowledge into very compartmentalized, very unique books that are going to, first, that somebody's going to be able to finish, right? It's not overwhelming for them. It's not a 700-page epic book. And it gets them the transformation that they're looking for. Then they're going to come back. And so instead of having everything that you know in one book, you should split up what you know into multiple books and make a series, because each book then attracts a new person and then they go to find what other books you have. So it's just a way to spread your profits and increase and scale. And so there are a lot of authors that I know, especially self-published, that do, multiple books with that goal, knowing that kind of 20 is the magic number where you should be making a significant amount of money after that if you're doing it correctly.
Okay, this is really cool. So then, so 2019, how long when you wrote that second book, what year was that?
The second book was at the end of 2018.
Well, you're just like, keep on going, just do another one, so.
And that one was a little bit experimental because I wanted to see what would happen if I had a 99-cent ebook. Because I always wanted to be on the 99-cent page on Amazon. I wanted something that lived there permanently. So it was shorter. And I would say out of all my books, that's maybe been the least popular, but it was How to Travel with a Full-Time Job. And it was purposely more skim than some of the other books because I wanted it to be a 99-cent product because I didn't want to put that much effort into something and then charge less for it than what I felt it was worth. So it was meant to be a more introductory book. And then the next one, the Solo Female Travel book, which is probably my largest book, came out in 2019. And then that one also won a Reader's Favorite Book Award.
Wow. Have you always been a good writer?
Yes, I had I was taken out of my classes as a young kid to do gifted programs where we would go and read. So while everybody else is reading See Spot Run, I'm reading Little Women and discussing the different aspects of this, as a second grader with the private teacher, maybe 3 or 4 other students there. I had reached the maximum reading level for 12th grade before I even made it to middle school. I love reading. I maybe attribute a lot of that since my mom was an educator. She never got out of work early enough to pick me up. And she never felt safe with me walking home in Philadelphia. So I went every single day after school to the library, and I was there for about 3 hours. And so I lived in the library. I grew up in the library. I know stories very well, and I love them so much. The library is my happy place. It's my safe space. Every library I walk into, it just makes me so happy. It could be the most basic library. But so, yes, I've always really known stories. And as a result, I've known writing because I've read good writing.
You write nonfiction, but the what you like to read when you were in those libraries, when you're waiting for your mom or whatever, those were fiction.
Yes. And my memoir is nonfiction, but it's definitely a whole different, ball game what I'm doing now, because before what I'm doing is instructional. I can very much share in a conversational tone. And now with the memoir, it's dialogue that I'm writing and trying to, talk about the inner thoughts of the characters and really develop the plot. And so it is a much more different writing style, but it's been rewarding for me, and I really enjoy it.
As far as nonfiction, is there a particular type of structure that, there's only a few, I would think, but I've never written a book. I've written, 8 screenplays, but I've never written a book. And I can imagine the same way. Did you write out the bones of your, all your main topics and then work out from there? You're shaking your head. Yes. That's what you do with that? What does that process look like for you?
Absolutely. So when I know I'm going to be tackling a set topic, like solo female travel book, I thought to myself, what are the things about solo travel that people might want to know? And I actually played with that book a little bit and started them with stories. So I started each chapter with a personal story of my travels, done in the sense of dialogue in the way a memoir would be, because I wanted to experiment with writing in that way. And so I would sit down and get all the categories of things that I thought people wanted answered. I tried to group them into cohesive sections, and then I would label those as different chapters and then just go from there. So yes, definitely filling out the bones outline of what it is I want to discuss, and then going in each one and filling in the blanks.
You have a good speaking voice. Did you do the audio version of your book?
I probably will for the memoir. I have not done the audiobook versions of my self-published books because I was going to do that. But then when the pandemic hit, I completely switched over to getting the book deal. And so that kind of took precedence over marketing the existing books in all the different ways possible. That's still on my to-do list. I have a very long to-do list generally. So I try to prioritize, but I do public speaking.
Okay. So do you feel a little nervous to get like now I got to write these books, but you're not nervous about time or the fulfillment of like when those need to come out, and how does that look?
The ones I've already published or the ongoing ones?
The ongoing ones.
And right now, all the energy is going into the memoir. And so actually for the last couple of years, it's been, how do I best market this? What do we need to do to take a memoir from this is my diary to this is something that other people want to read and that's going to change their life? So I have been in heavy, if you thought I was in preparation mode before, pretty much everything I've been doing for the last 2+ years has been to market the memoir that's coming out next year. And it is what I am thinking about all the time. I have tunnel vision on this, every single thing that I do, because I'm thinking memoirs are a really tough sell generally. And I want this to be something, the vision and the way I see it is that by the time we're done, I'm going to be leading kind of a global 12 trips in 12 months challenge where other people are signing up to do this. Other people are taking their own challenge. Giveaways I have planned. I've thought about doing a 12 trips in 12 months calendar that's releasing with the book. I've already planned out my launch party that's happening a year from now. I've already thought, what are the different ways that I can make this not just my story, but actually a global challenge, a global movement that inspires women, particularly because I do speak to women, I think, with a lot of my concerns over being, single and great in your career, but no children by 30. And what does that mean? And so helping women really enjoy their life and find that there is so much going on already, even if they don't have necessarily what society wants them to have. through this challenge. I really believe that travel, even if you're a person that's in a point of transition, if you're somebody who's feeling inadequate about where you are, I feel like travel has such a power to take you out of your daily bubble and infuse you with so much gratitude that you come back not feeling like you're failing, but rather feeling like you've really done something good for yourself.
Right. Okay. You wrote that first book. Now your travel journey. What does that look like after you, and at the 2018 on? What does your travel journey look like from there?
Yeah. So then from there on out, one of the trips in 2017 during the challenge was to my first travel conference. And I remember being really hesitant about going to Huntsville, Alabama on my year of adventure, right? Where I'm going to fabulous places and why am I going here? But while I was there, I attended a travel writing workshop with Don George, full day. And that really helped me, who is an editor for Nat Geo Traveler. Is just really just a wonderful author in and of himself. I have his book here within hand's reach, The Way of Wanderlust by Don George. He just tells stories so beautifully. It's the way that I aspired to write and the emotion that I hope to solicit from people one day with my stories. And so being able to do that full day class with him and seeing the return of investment that I got really made me want to develop my skills more. And so that year in 2018, I went also to a full day SEO class where I learned, I had a blog since 2014, but I still wasn't making any money on it. And it's because I didn't know how to write for a blog. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I didn't know what SEO was. I didn't know anything. And so after sitting in that conference and that special class for a day, it suddenly clicked. And so I took on another mini challenge, but already then 6 months later, my blog had reached enough views per month to qualify for the Mediavine Publisher Network, which is a network that pays you per 1,000 views that you get to your website. So suddenly my website became monetized and it was passive income. So it was for articles that I had already written. And then I became very tunnel vision focused on, well, we're making 1,000 a month. Let's get that up to 5,000 a month. Like, let's get up to however many views. And then the pandemic hit and all of my Mediavine income went from like $120 a day to $4 a day. And so it completely, because nobody was looking for travel stuff anymore on Google. And if you even talked about travel on social media, you were being irresponsible and promoting irresponsible things. Right. So it was a really bad time. And I saw then how something that I had put, over a year and a half of work into could be ripped away from me so quickly. Yeah. And that made me even more determined to diversify. And that's why I now have 7 income streams. And a lot of people, I'm sure I could have grown quicker in any one of them if I had just focused my energy on any one of them. But I never wanted to be that vulnerable again, where something could happen and then my entire income is gone. And so that's why maybe I've grown all the piles slowly, but they are growing. And now I have 7 income streams where if any one of them disappears for the month, I'm completely fine.
That is fascinating. Man, there was so much there. And as far, real quick, that's what I want to say. Really great. You just did really well with this first book. And then you wanted to study with this guy, though. You didn't sit there and say, well, I did really great. There's no need for me to take a class because I already did really well in this first book. Right. But that's not what, people that want to achieve and be better, that's not what they do, so they took that class with him. SEO, I kind of understand if you didn't understand it, Interesting about SEO is it's counterproductive sometimes. You're trying to stuff in a keyword or, and a PDF and a picture and tagging all that and into your blog. Tough to navigate that between taste and better placement in the blog, right? Is a constant battle.
And the way that I manage that is that I write SEO-friendly articles for questions that people are looking for. And I write my narratives and storytelling that I know is not going to do well SEO-wise. Those I pitch as freelance travel writing. And those I get published in other major publications. For instance, I just did an article on the last pearl diver in Qatar for The Observer. And that's not necessarily a post that people are Googling. It's not something that's going to bring a lot of traffic to my site, but it's a good story and it's a story I want to tell. And so I can use that story to get a new byline in this different publication.
What's your travel, Well, first of all, let's talk about COVID and what, how did you navigate that? Because it affected you so directly. What'd you do?
Yeah, everything stopped. And then I panicked. I, at this point, still had teaching English as a crutch. It took me a while to let that go because I think I felt that out of all the income streams that I was building, that was what I had that was somewhat steady, right? I could always at any point in time take on more classes. And so that was something that I had there still. So I just taught more and I was able to still cover my bills with teaching. Even though I had been significantly reducing my hours, I just opened up more hours again. And it wasn't bad because everybody was home. So all the students were home. So I had plenty of students, and that was kind of what floated me. But also at the time I started TikTok, which was, a new platform. And I was like, well, if I can't talk about travel, let me just try something completely different on here. And that did really well. And so it took off and that became quickly my biggest social media channel. And then
what'd you do on TikTok if you weren't talking about travel and the other stuff?
Was talking about my journey, how I, make money, how to work remotely, even just that, like any TikTok that I made on like these companies are hiring remote workers right now, instantly viral because everybody was looking for that at the time. And I had just published, I was already working on this book in January of 2020, 25 Ways to Work from Home, but I published that book in April of 2020. So that was also very timely. The book was doing well. I was promoting the book on TikTok and what are the different ways you can work from home? How do I make an income? And then with that doing so well, I actually, I grew very quickly and I was able to make connections on there that I'd never been able to make elsewhere, like Sean T, who is a famous trainer for Beachbody. And so he found one of my TikToks and reshared it to his network. And then he had me on his podcast as a guest. And so it was opening a lot of doors and opportunities for me. And then by October, I had shared a free coding class that was with Coding Bootcamp and the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. But again, I was sharing these free opportunities, free courses, ways to learn what you're doing when you're at home. And so that video did so well. And so many people actually went and signed up for their Coding Bootcamp that they found me and they were like, we would love for you to manage our TikTok account. And so then I was making, pretty much a good amount of money just making TikToks for them for a while through the pandemic. And that was what floated me.
God, how much time? I mean, how do you manage your time? That's a lot going on. What are your time management techniques?
My poor brain.
Gotta ask that question.
I do. That's why I said, I was like, I have such a long list and I just can't get overwhelmed with it because there's at any point in time, I have honestly, no less than 100 things that I could be doing or should be doing, or that I have on backlog still. And so I try to not overwhelm myself. I love pen and paper. I love planners. I have an actual really thick physical planner. And so it makes me feel happy when I put stickers on things and I see where everything's going. And I do like the art of putting pen to paper. I think it inscribes it in your brain more, but that's part of it. So I stay very organized on my own schedule with my own planner. And then I prioritize what are the main things that need to get done? What are the deadlines? I've had content that I've had to write for my blog for a while, but I've been prioritizing the book. I've been prioritizing other paid campaigns. I've been prioritizing the social media growth, while TikTok was still growing quickly. So those other things, unfortunately, that I'm still going to be working on fell to the back burner. I went on a fabulous trip to Jordan in summer 2021 and that, I still haven't written about it for my blog, but I've covered it extensively on social media. I've written about it for freelance travel outlets. I kind of go where the money is first, and then I come back later to the other things. So that's on my list for this summer, actually, because I'm taking some weeks to just write and finish my book edits for the memoir. And working on the blog is at the top of my list because it's something that's been pushed back for so long.
Yeah, where are you at today? Tell us the kind of a litany of like everything that's going on with you right now.
Yeah, so things just really blew up. I think just surviving 2020 was really important. I actually gave my third TEDx talk that year virtually. And so that did really well, and all the different things I did. So then 2021, I was selected to be part of the Points Guy Travel Advisory Panel. The Points Guy being a large website that talks about points and miles. And that came with a $5,000 travel stipend. That's how I ended up getting to Jordan and started traveling again. And then I was doing, at this point, I had 3 TEDx talks. So I was doing public speaking pretty regularly, at least virtually. It was very easy. But this year specifically, through all of my kind of income streams, I have the book that I'm working on, the memoir, and that's a big focus of mine because I wanted to do well, because having a publisher, I have the ability to hit bestseller lists, to possibly have it be turned into a movie or a TV show, as you know. So that was something that's a big priority for me because I think it could open a lot of doors. And so that's something I've been putting a lot of energy towards. I also have influencer campaigns. So now that I have over 350,000 social media followers, I'm constantly approached by brands to work with them, and they're very lucrative. So it's hard for me to turn them down. So I had a big brand reach out to me like 2 weeks ago wanting a campaign. And I was like, oh, it's so tight and I have so much happening, but I'm not going to say no to this because this is paying my mortgage for a couple months. So we're just gonna say yes and make it happen. And so influencer campaigns are definitely something that I do. The public speaking that I do, I've had 6 paid speaking engagements already this year. So I've been all over the place on those. At the same time, I've been taking trips to promote my memoir, to kind of redoing the challenge this year. So already this year, I've been to Egypt, Turkey, Easter Island, Japan during cherry blossom season. I, hiked a volcano in Guatemala to eat the only pizza in the world cooked on an active volcano. So I've been doing these epic experiences along the way. I bought my first property where you're seeing me now, which is why I'm not fully furnished yet because I'm in the process of doing it all. And then I launched some digital products. I had a travel writer training program that I did in March that did very well. And so that's something that, I'm still working and promoting. And then I have some affiliates that I do for different brands. I have a whole lot of credits for like the eSIMs and the Blade helicopter in New York. Like pretty much I got eSIMs and helicopter rides for days. No shortage of them. And just and then the blog still, I do still, publish sponsored posts on the blog, but I'd like to get back to doing just regular content and filling that out. I did one post on a Harry Potter cafe in Japan and it's already getting traction, and I have no other Japan posts. So I know if I write like 5 other Japan posts, they're going to do well. And so that's on my list of things to do. But these are all the kind of things that I'm juggling at the same time.
Success leaves clues, right? You're leaving a lot of clues right now. This is really good. After the 20 books, I asked this to everybody, your 3 to 5, your 10, 15-year plan after the 20 books and all that. We know that's part of the plan, right? So what does it look like?
Possibly part of the plan. I don't know how. I'm still debating what the plan is with book writing after the memoir. So we have to see how the memoir goes. If it does get picked up, if it does make a bestseller list, it becomes a life of its own. That may be something where, Gretchen Rubin made The Happiness Project into a podcast and she made it into recurring roles and things like that, and another series of books. More than likely, now that I have a publisher, any kind of stories will be going through them. They've been a really good publisher for me. Whereas maybe the nonfiction work, just instructional, like I was working, the next book before I switched to the memoir was going to be a guide to self-publishing. And I have a masterclass on that too. So I think maybe the nonfiction books I'll still do myself, but I actually think I'm living right now in the middle of the sequel to the memoir. It's been really interesting. I've been taking good notes as I go along, because I had a little incident where I may or may not have been dumped on a sponsored cruise on my birthday this year. So I think it's
on your birthday.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough.
Cruise.
I know. So it was a rough year, but a rough start to the year. But I actually do think that that's going to make a great opening for a
You're
book.
gonna Taylor Swift that shit. You're gonna like. That's awesome. That's what I do with stand up. Like, here we go. There's more material. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. No, I do. It reminds me a lot of the Legally Blonde, where Elle is dumped before she goes to Harvard, where she thinks she's going to get proposed to, and then it just doesn't happen. So I feel like this is a very similar opening, and I've already had, some really interesting first dates that I already see in my head as potentially being like a movie montage one day. Like I was at a drum circle where I saw like a banana promoting ecstatic dance, or like a guy with a dog on his shoulders. And I was like, oh, this is going to be so good for the book. Like I was really sitting there taking notes, like, I got to remember all of this.
That's a beautiful thing about being a writer, do anything that's writing, is because when adversity hits you, you're like, you ask yourself inherently an empowering question as opposed to disempowering question, because that's your passion. So automatically anybody, you don't have to be a writer, but if you ask yourself empowering questions, you're going to lead to like such better results. But you are inherent. Like I do the same thing. It's like, what's funny about this? What can I learn from this? How can I use this? Those are your first questions. You're like, well, I'm sure that first initial knee-jerk reactions like this sucks, but right afterwards you go into the creative mode, and that's wonderful.
Absolutely. And that was, there was a point right after it happened, I had a trip to Egypt, which my Egypt trip had been canceled the year before for my birthday because my partner had gotten COVID. And so I remember thinking like, he ruined my Egypt trip not once, but twice. And I was sitting there like crying at this luxury spa in Egypt. And I was like, this is going to be good. Like, this is funny stuff. And so it immediately, I did have that thought. I was still working through it. It was very sad. There were, therapy appointments and kind of processing and going through everything. But at the same time, I did have this underlying faith that everything was happening the way that it was supposed to happen for me. Like, I've never doubted that I am exactly where I'm meant to be at exactly this moment in time. I really fully believe that. And, besides the fact that I think it's going to be a great story, I was able to find this place where I live, where, I had been house hunting forever and I couldn't find a place. And then suddenly this happened. And, within 2 months, I found a condo here where I'm at currently. And I was able to buy it without any issues. And it all just worked out and just fell into place. And that's all. I take it all as signals from the universe that you're on the right path. There's been so many things that have been happening for me. I won 2 travel journalism awards this year. And so it's just been, it's been tainted with a little bit of like sadness, because I did have expectations to be sharing that with somebody. And I had already kind of visualized this year and the way it was going to go. I thought my book was going to come out, this fall. And then I realized it was being pushed to next summer. And at first I was like, oh, disaster strikes again. But then I was like, no, this is exactly what you need. You're not going to be ready by this fall to promote this book. Like, you still have so many things to do to set the launch party up, to get the right people to promote this. Like, there's still a lot happening. So what maybe seems like a curse in the moment actually ends up being a blessing in disguise. And so for me, I really believe that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be right now.
Jen on a jet plane. I love it. Jen Ruiz, thank you so much for sharing. You got it going on. You're moving fast. You're having fun. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolator.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.